we finally get to make some real progress on the RX7 today. I have spent the past 4 to 5 days removing undercoat and prepping the bottom side of this car. So if I look dirty, I've been doing it all morning, but we are finally at a point now where we can go ahead and epoxy primer the bottom side of the car, let that cure, seam seal everything back up, let that cure, and then put the undercoating on. Because once the undercoating is back on this car and we have fresh undercoat, we can actually start bolting things back up and making it look like a car. We're gonna send it to paint as a rolling shell because that's going to be a little bit easier to load it up on a trailer and move it to a paint booth, because for the actual painting of the exterior, I am going to have a professional do it. I don't feel confident in my abilities to be able to paint the exterior of the car. We are going to be painting the interior of it as well as the engine bay, but I'm going to let a professional do the actual exterior so that way it comes out looking like primo, because I want this thing to be SEMA quality, and my painting expertise are not SEMA quality. I also bought a 99 spec front bumper for this thing. This is the KBD bumper. We're actually not going to be using this. I bought a Mazda OEM 99 spec bumper and core support for this. I think it looks way better than the USDMs do. The fitment on this really isn't that bad, but the issue that I have with it is like right in that center lip area. It's just a little bit saggy. I mean, the bumper will work fine if somebody wanted to use it. They're polyurethane, so they'll always take their shape back, but the fitment just isn't OEM, and that's really what I'm shooting for on this car. So we're not gonna be using this, but I did want to show you guys that at least. Now, this is where all my time has been spent working on this thing. So I have gone through and I've completely stripped and removed all of the wheel wells, the entire underside of the car, and prepped this thing for a new coat of epoxy primer. I've repaired all the rust that was in here and got this thing ready to go. I've also removed all the old seam sealer so we can apply some new seam sealer. All of the wheel wells are also nice and fresh for the most part. They're all just bare metal at this point. I had to get in there with a lot of wire wheels to be able to remove a lot of the rust that's been in here. So this has taken up so much time getting this, and I feel like this is the worst part of the build, is getting all of this old stuff off. This is honestly, arguably, I'd rather sand the entire car than have to do this again, but I'm very pleased with how it's come out. So what we need to do at this stage is prep before we start spraying primer. So I am gonna hit the entire underside with just a hand Brillo pad. We're gonna Scotch-Brite it all. We're gonna back mask, and then after we back mask, we're gonna clean it all with some acetone and some wax and grease remover. And then from there, we can actually start getting things sprayed out. I am gonna let this epoxy primer cure. I do wanna give a huge shout out. We have a new channel partner. The guys over at Eastwood have jumped on and they're helping us. They're supplying all the paint, the primers, the clear coats, everything for the RX7. So if you guys do need anything from Eastwood, you can use our discount code Smeedia10, save 10% over at Eastwood site. So huge thank you to Eastwood. So we're gonna be using their epoxy primer kits, direct metal. We'll let that cure for 24 hours, use our seam sealer, and then we'll do the undercoat after that. And at that point, we should be well on our way to getting this thing to become a rolling shell again. So let's go ahead and grab a Brillo pad, start hand just scuffing everything up one more time. We'll back mask everything with some masking tape, clean it, and then let's start spraying. I don't think I'll film all the masking because I don't think you guys want to watch all that, but I'll give you just kind of a general census of what we're doing in here. So any hole that's going from the bottom of the car into the car, we're just going to tape up. So that way, it's not necessarily the primer that I care about getting in here, it's the undercoat. I don't want the undercoat inside the car because I just removed so much of that rubber coating that I don't want it coming back in for, I feel like, obvious reasons. So that's why we're doing all this. Plus it just gives a much cleaner look to what you're doing with everything. So I'm gonna go around, we're just gonna mask. We're just gonna put tape over any holes that go from the inside of the car to the bottom of the car. Now the whole reason I wanted to start on the bottom of the car for all of this is because once we have the bottom done, then we can start getting like our suspension. While we work on the engine bay and the interior and all that, we can also start getting our suspension stuff on. So it kind of makes the most sense because obviously I'm gonna have to trailer this thing to paint. I can't drive it there. I can't pull it there on a bare chassis. I just don't have the means for that. So this way, it's kind of like two birds, one stone type of deal. This is what I've come up with, and this is our little mini paint booth for painting underneath the car. So went around, masked the entire car, took forever, cut everything where we needed to cut it, hung up all of this plastic sheeting and made a fort. And I put like all these little yellow red plugs into any of the threaded holes in the frame, so that way it's not getting any undercoat or anything like that in the threads, and it'll gum up the threads, because that's it's one of the last things that we want, is to gum up threads on anything. I forgot to take that out. I gotta take that out. But anyways, so at this point, we're gonna wipe off the undercarriage one more time with some acetone. We're gonna lay down a big sheet of plastic along the floor, mix our epoxy primer, and I guess let's get to spraying at that point. We have our paint gun here. This is I haven't even set this up yet. Should probably do that. Primer sealer 1.4. Okay, that's orange. That's this guy right here. Okay, so that is going to go right through. Look at that. So it comes with one mixing cup. These are the disposable cups. So we're going to be mixing everything 1-to-1 ratio. That just goes right inside of that. I'll link all this stuff down below too. I got all this off Amazon. These are cool because they got little strainer filters inside of them. So I'm going to put this over here. So we're gonna be mixing everything 1-to-1. Never had a fancy paint gun before. I've always just used Harbor Freight. Ow! Oh! Dude, again. Oh, okay. It's the next day. I've let this sit overnight and it looks phenomenal. There are a couple runs up here on these back tubs, but that's not a huge deal. This is getting covered with the undercoating stuff. So aside from those couple runs right there, everything else came out immaculate. We have fresh epoxy primer on all of the wheel wells to protect the metal, the entire underside of the car as well, the trans tunnel, bottom of the frame rails coming all the way up to up here. So I am more than happy with this. And now that we have the car epoxy primed, we need to seam seal it. Before we seam seal it, I have to go through with a little bit of Scotch-Brite and scuff up all the areas that seam sealer is going to go, so that way it can get some mechanical adhesion on there and actually stick. Once the seam sealer's on there, we'll let it cure for about 2 hours, and then we'll probably spray our undercoating at that point and just let everything cure and just let it all off gas and let the RX-7 chill for a couple of days while all of this dries up. But once all of this is done, then we can actually start putting parts back on the car, because I've got so many parts that have already been sent to powder coat and have come back. Heat shields, everything you could think of. It's all starting to come back. I just need the hardware to come back from the zinc plating company, so that way we can actually start bolting stuff up. But we'll worry about that later. Let's go ahead and start going through and just Scotch-Briting up all the little areas that we need to. Scotch-Brited the whole underbody since we're going to be spraying it anyways with our undercoating, but like I said, before we get to that, we need to seam seal. So I underestimated how much seam sealer this was going to take. I just went through and Scotch-Brited the whole car just to make sure everything was good. So I bought 2 of these 3M heavy body seam sealers. I think they'll work fine. I'm going to do the wheel wells, all the visible areas in this, because I think this comes out black. This is gray, so I think I'm gonna save all of the gray for underneath the car where you're not necessarily gonna see it. So there's a couple different ways you can seam seal this. You can do it the factory way where you mask everything off and then you do like a paintbrush and you paint it all. I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna do some clean beads going around all the seams, run my finger down it. It's all gonna get covered up with undercoating anyways. The epoxy primer, or the seam sealer is just here to ensure that no water is getting behind these panels and rusting everything out. So I don't feel a need to go through and mask up every seam on the car. I have a feeling this stuff's gonna smell like straight up butthole. Someone was telling me my hands are gonna be really tired after this. One of these. The underbody's all sealed up now. Every seam has some seam seal. I did run out of this black 3M stuff, which I highly prefer over the generic stuff that I bought from the auto parts store, because it was a lot thinner and it's just taking longer to cure. I mean, it is curing, don't get me wrong. So while that cures, we're gonna go ahead and make another massive paint booth going around the RX7. And once we have that set up, we should be good to spray. So I haven't even read the instructions. We're using Raptor liner. It should work fine from what I was reading. They have very specific underbody coatings. People also use Raptor liner without any issues. So I already have the Raptor liner, already paid for it. So I'm gonna use it. It should be totally fine with what we're doing. The thing with Raptor liner versus like underbody coating, the underbody coating is a little bit more flexible. So if we need to touch things up in the future with some like rubberized coating, is this not rubber? Textured finish black, rubberized coating. No, this is rubber, that is rubberized. I don't know what I'm saying. So let me start cutting some plastic sheets and let's get this thing set up again. We really need to mask it this time because that stuff will get everywhere and it's a pain to get off. This is what the fenders used to look like when I first got the car. And I had just sprayed some black spray paint in there just to kind of hide some of the rust, but check this out. This looks so good. We are fully protected on the bottom side of this car now. So we've got all of our brand new seam sealer going across to every single seam in the underbody or on the underbody of the car. Got our trans tunnel masked off that we had done. Other wheel well. This came out phenomenal. Coming down under the car, we have our trans tunnel going back, all the way coated, all the way seam sealed. And it honestly looks better than probably what it looked like brand new. It's probably, well, I can tell you this, it was done better because all the seam seals actually on every single panel gap. That was one of the things that I saw with this when Mazda put these together, is they did not seam seal every seam on the bottom side of the car, at least, where water and intrusion can get in, which will lead to rust. So this has come out phenomenal. We have every single joint in here seam sealed, we epoxy primered, undercoated. This will take the test of time. This car will outlive me. I can promise you that. So at this point, we can start prepping to paint the engine bay and the interior, which we'll probably start doing next video. I think the paint got delivered today. So once the engine bay is painted, we can actually get the front subframe back in, start getting suspension components in, and start putting the car back together, which I'm big hyped for. Once we have the RX7 as a rolling shell, we're going to take it to go get painted. Like I said, I do not feel comfortable to put a show quality paint job on this car. The interior and the engine bay, I don't mind practicing on because those are things that I they're going to be seen, but they're not going to be seen to the extent at which the entire exterior of the car will. So since I want it to look primo, I'm gonna have a paint shop do it. And the way I'm doing it is a little, I mean, it's like a full respray of a car at this point. It's not like a factory respray or when you take your car to go get repainted and it's fully assembled. Everything, every little inch on this car is going to be repainted. It will no longer resemble a silver car at all. You could look at any panel, any jam, any behind the dash, all of it will be white. We are repainting the car Aspen white. It's a Subaru color. I think it's a really good looking white. And it's just, dude, it's like I've never gone to this extent with a car before, and it's such a wild feeling compared to the other stuff I've done. Because a lot of, like the 07 STI or any other car, Karma, any other car I built in the past, it's just been like bolt-ons and we're just doing stuff to the car. This is like all-out restoration, and it honestly just kind of feels good. So that is all I've got for you guys on this one. I'm big hyped with how this has come out. We're gonna keep making progress. This is a huge step forward because this is something that I was just daunting over doing for so long. So with that, that's all I got for you guys on this one. If you like the video, you know what to do. Go hit that like button, turn it black, blue, green, yellow, purple, silver, side, and whatever color it turns for you. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to be, I'll put it in one of these corners. No idea which one quite yet, but with that, I'll catch you guys in the next one. So peace out, homies.